In terms of the tone of the call, it was friendly. It was one where we're hopeful, and the president is hopeful. This is a step in returning to normal in a long, important, abiding relationship that the United States has with France.
Well, earlier I spoke to our Washington correspondent, Kethevane Gorjestani, who told us more about that phone call.
It was a friendly phone call. That was the word that was used by Jen Psaki, but she was asked directly whether Joe Biden had actually apologized to Emmanuel Macron, and to that question, she did not answer directly, simply insisting that the president had acknowledged the fact that there could have been more consultation with France. And on that point, the statements coming out of the Elysee Palace and the White House were extremely similar, but for one line where the American statement said that the situation could have benefited from open consultation with their allies, whereas the French statement actually said that the consultation could have avoided the situation, avoided altogether that situation. So a little bit of a difference in the analysis of what those consultations would have achieved. But overall, this was a call to sort of stop the rising tensions between the two countries, between the two men who spoke for about half an hour and who seemed to have at least sort of put a dampener on the rising tensions, on the comments coming from both sides as to who was really responsible. And that was actually another question that was asked of Jen Psaki. If the Americans did not see the outrage coming from France, if they missed something, why did they not consult the French? Who is to blame? Well, Jen Psaki said that no one was really to blame, that the team was working with the State Department, with the White House, but that lessons might have to be learned.
And Kethevane, what's this going to mean for relations between France and the U.S. going forward from this?
Well, first, there will be some concrete steps. As you mentioned, the French ambassador to the United States, Philippe Etienne, will be returning to Washington, D.C. next week for intensive work with senior U.S. officials. So that's the first step, rebuilding those ties, restarting the communication between the French and the American. And then there will be that meeting between Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron sometime in October, somewhere in Europe. Jen Psaki saying that the details of that meeting were not really definite yet, but that the two men were definitely going to meet and speak. The question is, now that we've passed the worst of the rift between France and the United States, how long, how much will it take to actually rebuild the trust on the French side? The fact that the French really felt blindsided by this announcement, that will have to be worked on by the Americans. And that is why you saw in that statement that the U.S. Was eager to have intense talks, intense consultation. One thing that the French may not really like about some of the answers from the press secretary today is the fact that the president was hopeful for a return to normal, because as we've seen in the past week, the French did not exactly like the American normal, and they're actually wanting something to change in the relation between the two countries.